Funding for Market Journal is provided by the Nebraska Corn Board.
Growing more with less is the mantra of Nebraska's corn farmers, and they're using incredible technology to do it. Soil moisture monitors let them know when their crop needs water and how much. GPS systems eliminate overlaps in the field, saving fuel and money. New hybrids reduce the use of pesticides and increase yields. When you're talking new technology and innovation, Nebraska corn farmers are all ears. Nebraska's family corn farmers, sustaining innovation.
Market Journal, television for agricultural business decisions, is a presentation of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine, and major funding for Market Journal is provided by the Nebraska Corn Board.
Welcome to this week's edition of Market Journal. I'm Jeff Wilkerson. On this episode, Jeff Peterson looks at the USDA's estimates of 2017 production. Jerry Volesky talks about range and pasture conditions. Amit Jhala describes possible dicamba injury in Nebraska, and Dave Aiken outlines property tax reform efforts in Nebraska. Jeff Peterson from Heartland Farm Partners is our corn and soybean market analyst this week. The U.S. Department of Agriculture on Thursday released its August crop report containing its projections on American output for the 2017 growing season. Jeff joined us shortly after the release to dissect the agency's estimates.
You know, unfortunately, Jeff, what we had is those numbers are negative compared to the trade estimates, and that's what's hurt us. So, as of right now, we've got the markets down. If we were able to get rid of the trade estimates, though, Jeff, I wouldn't feel too bad about this report, to be honest with you.
Tell me where these trade estimates come from.
There's major sources. Dow Jones has their estimates, Reuters has theirs, Bloomberg has theirs, Wall Street Journal. And what they're doing is they have a set group of different analysts that they reach out to and get different estimates from them. What do they think the yield is going to be? What do they think the stocks are going to be? What do they think production is going to be? So they just take a sampling. There's a little bit of confusion this year. Sometimes when they grab their yield numbers, they have to be clear on what they're asking. Are they asking about final, or are they asking about is USDA's numbers for this report? And I think we might have had a little confusion with that in these estimates this time.
Yield was one of the big changes or the big surprises to the trade estimate. What do you think is noteworthy about the estimates that the USDA came out with today?
Well, I think we got to break it apart. First thing we got to say, it was higher than what was expected. We come in at a 169.5. The trade estimates that we're looking at are looking at a 166. If you're just to look at that number, you're saying, Jeff, oh no, it's a big crop. But the positive side of that, and this is what we want to walk away from, is the fact that a 170.7 is where we started at. It was still 1.2 bushels lower. We really have to understand what this report was about in regard to yield. It had two sides to it. It had the farmer objective side and it had the infield estimate side, right? They surveyed over 21,000 farmers for this report. They did probably a little bit over 4,500 infield observations, and they got to bring those all together. And if you really look at it from the objective side out in the field, one thing that stands out to us is the ear counts. The ear count, the last time we really had a number this low, it's a little bit over 28,000 ears. 2013 through 16 were all bigger, so the ear count is down. I think we'll see lower ear weights as we go forward in additional reports.
What was noteworthy about the stocks numbers?
Yeah, the stocks numbers, let's start first on the old crop side first. I think what stood out to us is no change at all on the old crop corn numbers. Soybean numbers, okay, it's because of the strong demand, down 40 million bushels, down to 370 million bushel carryout. Then we move over into the new crop side though, and what ended up happening, if we look at it for the 2017 crop, it came in 2.273 billion bushels. That's down from 2.325. That's 52 million bushels less than what USDA was talking about in the last report. But 1.966 is actually what the trade was looking for. So we got a bigger number than what the trade was looking for on the corn side.
When you reference the strong demand in soybeans, foreign demand specifically?
That's exactly what it was. It's the export demand. It's a continued appetite coming out of China to continue to increase the demand and take those bushels away.
So this question, we've asked for the past number of weeks here, but obviously is in the spotlight this week because of this report. What do you see in crop conditions in the areas of concern or the areas that are doing really well as you look across both Nebraska and the rest of the Corn Belt?
One thing we should look at first is that let's talk about the corn conditions first, and let's in particular talk about the Nebraska yield. They've got that up 5 bushels the acre compared to last year. Everybody's kind of scratching their head a little bit when our conditions are down from where we were last year quite a bit. And as we move ourselves around the state, we would overall, our opinion would be, we think we're going to actually come in with a lower yield than last year on the corn, not a higher yield. So I think that's for Nebraska side. As we move ourselves across the nation, one of the things that we really see, it's variability. We were up in Minnesota last week, and honestly, you couldn't see a better crop. But as we talk to our customers in Iowa, the thing that we hear from them is that it just depends on where you're at. You've got some areas that look really good in the Northeast, but through most of the state, there's some problem areas that are popping up across there. So I think the big thing that we're saying is that the crop conditions that we have, both on the corn and soybean side, we don't believe support what the yield numbers that were put out today.
Now that this report is done, this was the report that people were looking at for, at least a month or two here. What do you say to the guy who has some old crop left in the, ideally corn, left in the bin, and then is trying to make some sales for new crop, corn or beans?
Yeah, so here's what I'd say to them, Jeff. Today, we just want to go ahead and take a sigh of relief. We want to be patient here. The market's going to overdo the move today. We believe that down the road, there's going to be better selling opportunities. First, on the old crop, if you need to move it, okay, go ahead and do a basis contract on it if you have to move it. That's going to give you some time still to get a better futures price, but do everything you can not to go ahead and set the futures price here today. For new crop, we would say actually just go ahead and wait here. Here's what we have to think about. Big picture, what we're seeing is that the stocks are still coming down on the old crop, okay? Both the US and in the world, big picture. We believe that that means we're going to see some better selling opportunities after we get past harvest. So as a result of that, we would say that you still want to be patient also on those new crop bushels.
Next week, Mike Briggs will join us to look at cattle markets. The latest report from Nebraska's National Agricultural Statistics Service paints a less than favorable picture for grazing animals. While 28% of the state's pasture and range is rated good to excellent, 35% is listed as poor to very poor. On Monday, we traveled to North Platte and talked with Nebraska Extension's Jerry Volesky about the outlook for the rest of the grazing season. But to start, we asked for an overview of current conditions in that part of the state.
Well, ever since June 1st, throughout pretty much central and even into southwest Nebraska, it's been very dry. There was a lot of areas that those months of June and July had less than an inch or even less than half an inch. Here in August, many areas have started to receive some rainfall, and so that's been fortunate. But I think for the most part, we'll definitely see a reduction in our pasture production. And there were a number of producers that had been seriously thinking about some drought management strategies, moving yearlings off the ranch early, a lot of talk about early weaning, those types of things.
This rain in August, how much does that help right now?
Well, there were it's been quite spotty too, as it normally or always is, but there were some areas that I noticed got some rain, good rain in the earlier part of July after a dry June, and those have really started to look pretty good. Now that again, there's some other areas that didn't receive any rain, some of these patchy rains until late July, and for the most part, I don't think that will help too much. It's just a little bit too late in the growing season for those warm season grasses. It will help them keep their vegetative state or greenness a little bit longer, but I think for the most part it's important that it will help them next year. So by having that rain, they can build up some energy reserves for next year.
Overall, as you look out for the rest of the grazing season, what do producers need to consider or think about?
Well, I think for the rest of the grazing season, watch the pastures closely, monitor them in terms of the level of utilization that's has taken place. They still, of course, with reduced production, may have to consider moving them to different pastures or ungrazed pastures yet, and a little bit sooner than they expected.
So producers will be able to learn more about pasture and ranges at the Goodmanson Sandhills Lab Open House. Tell me what's noteworthy this year and what producers might learn by attending.
Sure, we've got our 18th annual Goodmanson Open House on the 23rd of August, and we've got a great program. We think we've got leading it off with newly retired Don Adams, who'd been, over the course of his career, did a lot of systems and cow research up there at Goodmanson. So he's going to provide kind of an overview of that. Something new this year, we've got Kurt Pate. He's a renowned livestock handling stockmanship person, and he's going to be giving a 2-hour demonstration and hopefully provide a lot of useful information for cattle producers.
And the very talented market analyst?
Right, yes. And in the afternoon, we've got Jim Robb from the Livestock Marketing Information Center, who will talk about his perceptions or outlook of what the cattle market's going to be doing. And then, as always, we've got research updates provided by the faculty that do work at the Goodmanson, plus a number of exhibitors, both outside and inside, the exhibitors from different industries associated with livestock production.
What do you think producers like most about this event? What do you think they get out of it the most?
Well, I think each year we try to have a few things different. We try to make it a learning event. And it's been, like I mentioned, our 18th consecutive year that we've been doing this. And so we've got a lot of regulars that they mark this down on their calendar way ahead of time, just to get up there and listen to the different speakers, interact with some of their peers, and so on.
If people aren't familiar with the lab, can you tell me about the Goodmanson Sandhills Lab and kind of what it is for the university?
Well, it's since they're established in the early 1980s, it's been over that time, of course, slowly developed to the facility that it is today. Large working ranch and a number of different faculty, all related to beef cattle production and rangeland resources, do research up there. And then we also have over the last number of years really made it an education center as well. So we've got a number of different extension programs that people could take the opportunity to really learn more about some of the new and interesting research that's going on.
You can find more information about this year's Goodmanson Sandhills Lab Open House through a link on the Market Journal website. We told you in our previous episode of Market Journal how producers in Missouri were experiencing injury from off-target movements of dicamba. Nebraska Extension weed management specialist Amit Jhala said as of Wednesday, Nebraska Extension had received 260 complaints related to suspected dicamba damage. With weeds increasing resistance to herbicides such as glyphosate, dicamba could be an especially valuable tool for growers in the South where no weed is yet resistant to it. Only one weed in Nebraska has developed resistance to dicamba. That was kochia in 2009. Amit joined us earlier this week to discuss the challenges farmers here are facing with injury.
It is widespread, but not as bad as in Missouri and other states like Illinois. But yeah, we have received number of complaints and we have visited number of fields so far. Primarily, in my opinion, we have more injuries in eastern part of the state, and it makes sense because we have more corn and soybean in eastern part compared with western part of the state.
You said you visited several of these locations. What do you see when you're on location?
Most of the fields that I have visited, where you will see dicamba injury basically on the top of the leaves, and it's almost like a consistent injuries starting from one end of the field to the another end. Like some fields I visited near Geneva, it was like about 40 acres of the field was injured with dicamba off-target movement and consistent injuries in 40 acres across the field.
A large part of this, do you think, is it volatilization or drift?
Yes, so probably it's because of volatility. Off-target movement with physical drift cannot create this type of consistent injuries. You will see a clear pattern if it is drift, physical drift, but in case of volatility we are seeing more consistent results, and that's why I believe it is coming from volatility. And it is also possible like the temperature inversion type of situation provided more opportunity for dicamba to be more volatile this year.
Can you explain what happens when the chemical volatilizes?
It basically, when you apply dicamba on crop in liquid formulation, it will convert in gas, and then these gas particles are taken over by wind, and that is how it can create situation where it can go off target.
So you worked with XtendiMax, as we talked last November, for a number of years here. Is there anything consistent or inconsistent with what you've seen, or just tell me about the work you've done?
See, basically our research was primarily focusing on weed control and crop safety in Extend soybean, and we have tested number of herbicide programs and how crop will respond, but we never did any work on volatility, or we never did any work on how temperature inversion can create more chances of volatility. So that's basically our work was typically focusing on weed control.
What would you say to growers who are thinking about or not thinking about using this product next year?
It will be hard to tell now, considering the issues that we had this year, not only in Nebraska but also in several states in the north central part. It will be hard to recommend at this point. I'm sure we need to do some more research on volatility part, as well as how we can reduce the off-target movement from this product.
So far, what have been the best management practices, the windows of time, or the characterizations of successful applications?
It is again hard to tell in yes and no type of question, but some of the work conducted by my colleague Dr. Kevin Bradley at University of Missouri, they have done some work and correlated the effect of temperature inversion on this issue, and they have suggested most of the time during March and July in Missouri, they have seen this temperature inversion in about 50% of the days, which is more than we expect to see. So they have suggested if you apply these new formulations or any other dicamba based formulations between 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. there are more chances that you will not create temperature inversion type of situation, because it was seen more during the evening time compared with daytime.
Yeah, just as a final aside, can you explain why dicamba is maybe a desired chemical or a desired avenue to use here with resistant weeds?
It is a desired chemical and it has provided good weed control. It's a broad leaf herbicide. It can control more than 250 broadleaf weed species. Plus we have number of at least 6 weeds in Nebraska resistant to glyphosate. So it's a good useful tool, especially in soybean where we do not have many post-emergence herbicide options, but unfortunately we are seeing more off-target movement, and which is not something good. So yeah, we may need to do something next year.
For more information about dicamba injury, you can view our interview with University of Missouri Extension weed scientist Kevin Bradley in the August 4th episode of Market Journal. The August Nebraska farmer says only 5 years ago, Jason Richters was knifing in all his nitrogen during the fall in the form of anhydrous. But now the southeastern Nebraska producer applies nitrogen through several split applications in spring and summer. Richters has worked with Central Valley Ag to develop his program, which you can read about in the August Nebraska Farmer. Soybean farmers in certain areas of the state may be noticing painted lady butterflies on plants, according to Nebraska Extension reports. Nebraska Extension entomologist Julie Peterson describes how producers can scout for the butterflies and explains the necessary thresholds for possible treatments.
So this year, growers may be noticing activity of butterflies in their soybean fields. So these would be orange and black and white butterflies called painted lady butterflies. They are laying their eggs in soybeans, or they could have also emerged from their cocoons in those soybean fields as well. The eggs will hatch out into caterpillars called thistle caterpillars, and these do eat the foliage of soybean plants. So something to be aware of is that these are defoliators, but to know that the threshold for reproductive stage soybean is 20%. So there is quite a bit of soybean defoliation that the plants can withstand. So just be aware of the thresholds and scout your fields if you're seeing butterfly activity.
Next week, we'll talk with Julie about western bean cutworm numbers this season in her area of North Platte, Nebraska. While falling from 2015 levels, property taxes continue to be a heavy expense for Nebraska producers. USDA data released last week showed the average Nebraska farm spent almost $23,000 on real estate and personal property taxes in 2016. That number is down nearly 8% from the previous year, but is $9,600 more than any other state measured by the USDA. Over the last 10 years, the average cost per farm has risen 71% and now accounts for 5.1% of the state's total farm production expenditures, also the highest in the nation. We recently talked with Nebraska Extension Ag and Water Law Specialist Dave Aiken to get an overview of ag property tax relief efforts during the 2017 Nebraska legislative session and a look at what could transpire in 2018.
Well, as we all know, property values are still high. They're starting to come down, but the taxes are still high, sadly. We have some of the highest ag property taxes in the country. and the share of property taxes Nebraska paid by ag has really gone over the last 10 years, so it's a real issue.
Tell me what property taxes pay for here in this state.
Well, the big one is public schools, and about 60% of property tax receipts go to support our local public schools in Nebraska.
So what happened this year regarding property taxes?
Well, the legislature began with a $90 million hole in the budget, and that increased to $950 million by the end of the session. But that was about 11% of the 2-year state budget, so it was a big financial issue to have to deal with, and made it the worst time, of course, to try to reduce anybody's taxes anywhere.
The governor has made property taxes a major focus, not only throughout his tenure here, but before, during his campaign for governor. What was his proposal this year?
Well, he proposed reducing valuations by shifting from the market value-based property assessment to a capitalized earnings approach, which is something we've looked at before in Nebraska. In addition, they proposed capping annual increases to no more than 3.5%. But 90% of the governor's property tax relief package would have gone to income taxes and only 10% to property taxes. And of course, that didn't make property tax reduction folks very happy.
And what happened to that proposal?
Well, it stalled on general file. There was a filibuster. It needed 33 votes, it only got 27, so it'll be around next year, but didn't get anywhere this year.
So tell me about the other proposals.
Well, the Revenue Committee put some different proposals together into one bill, LB 640. That was from Senator Groney of North Platte, and it would have capped ag property tax's share of school finance to 60% and increased state school aid, which would have shifted a little more state revenue toward rural schools and away from urban schools.
And 640 went where?
It also stalled on general file, so there, nothing major happened on property taxes this year.
Where does that leave us?
We have had some things happen that will hopefully help a little bit on property taxes. The proportion of the state property tax credit that goes to ag will increase this year. In addition, state aids to school will increase this year. Hopefully, that'll take a little bit of pressure off those local property taxes.
Well, to finish out here, where do you think next year leaves us here for the state with the debate around property taxes?
Well, we've got two interim studies that are going to look at it. We've got those two major property tax proposals still sitting on the first round of debate that will be back next year. Hopefully we get some rain or some better prices, but if not, we'll be talking about property tax reform.
Now, with this week's weather forecast, here's Nebraska Extension ag climatologist Al Dutcher.
Well, folks, here again for the weekly forecast, and during this last week we had scattered precipitation events occurring across western Nebraska almost on a daily basis. But we did have one widespread complex move through the state on Thursday that dropped some pretty significant rainfall across portions of southwest, south central Nebraska. But as it moved toward the east, it did lose some of its punch, but we still had a respectable rainfall south of Interstate 80. North of Interstate 80, it's been the same old story and song and dance that we've seen for the last couple of months. That is as the systems move toward the east, they lose their punch, and we're just not seeing as much precipitation, and hence we've been seeing the drought kind of hang on and in some cases intensify over the northern plains. And unfortunately, until we start to see some widespread convective outbreaks across this region, we can expect that this drought will continue. And in fact, some of the new numerical model guidances that have come out that allow us to try to gauge how long the drought will hold on indicate that there is better than an 80% likelihood that the drought will still remain in some type of status of D1 levels or greater as we go out into the 3-month time frame. So it's going to take a while to undo some of the damage of this year's drought, particularly across the northern plains. So as we go to the latest drought monitor to get an update, what we are going to notice is that there's a widespread area of a strong drought, but we've seen the improvements in Nebraska and the Panhandle. Northern half of the Panhandle back to normally dry conditions has been moved back to normal conditions, and we've lost some of the signature of D1 or severe or moderate drought conditions in the southwest part of the state. Now, in terms of the forecast, in the upper air, we do have a trough with a few waves that are moving through. So we have the cool air in place in the upper atmosphere. We got the ridge over the western United States, and then we have a surface low across Texas that's going to feed moisture up and overrun this cool air, creating the potential for thunderstorm activity through the entire day. Best chance, once again, western half of the state. Then we do see this trough kind of relaxing a little bit, but there is another piece of energy expected to move through. We still have the surface low to our south. That is going to bring up moisture, along with the counterclockwise circulation of this high pressure system. It's going to push moisture up into southern Nebraska, do show a little bit over northeast Nebraska, and then we start to see the ridge building in with a little bit warmer temperature starting to move into our region as we get into Monday. We have surface low in the Dakotas and in deep southern Texas. It looks like we're going to get caught between these two areas. Most of the moisture will remain confined to the south of us. That's going to limit the moisture coming into the South Dakota low, so we're looking at a fairly dry day. And then we start to see a trough trying to build in from the Pacific Northwest at the same time as ridging in the southeast. Surface low still holds together in the Texas Panhandle, and we are going to expect to see precipitation outbreaks in the western high plains. Some of this might make it up into southern and southwestern Nebraska. Main precipitation, COC, is to our east. Then we start to see a flattening out of the upper air pattern. Little waves moving across, one moving across the Dakotas as we go through Wednesday may generate some shower activity, particularly across the Dakotas, and some isolated convection south central southeast Nebraska is anticipated. Then we go more zonal on Thursday as warm air starts to build back toward the north, and we see a surface low, thermal low, developing basically in the southwestern portions of Kansas and the Oklahoma Panhandle. That's going to generate thunderstorm activity ahead of that surface low, and that looks like it's going to be moving up more into the central United States than in Nebraska. Another piece of energy moves across on Friday. This may actually generate some good thunderstorm activities. We see a surface low developing in northeastern Nebraska, bringing up that warm moisture, and we do see some convective complexes being depicted by the models to occur on Friday. Now, as we look at the 8 to 14-day forecast, two pockets of below normal temperatures indicated the Pacific Northwest and the Southeast. Normal conditions for the High Plains region. In terms of precipitation, above normal precipitation indicated, and the models are strongly hitting at temperatures returning to above normal as we go through this week into the following week, so the heat will be on in earnest.
Thanks, Al. Today's interviews are available individually on the Market Journal website and through the Market Journal mobile app. They include information on corn and soybean markets, pasture conditions, dicamba injury, and property tax reform in Nebraska. As always, you can keep up with Market Journal during the week by following us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Next week, Mike Briggs will be our cattle market analyst, and Lauren Giesler will talk about scouting for soybean diseases. Until then, thanks for watching. I'm Jeff Wilkerson. We'll see you next week.
Join Market Journal online at marketjournal.unl.edu. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine, and major funding for Market Journal is provided by the Nebraska Corn Board. Market Journal is produced by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources.